The world knew Barron Trump as the tall, quiet son of former President Donald Trump. At 6'7" and just 17 years old, he was often the subject of headlines simply because of his presence. But behind the cameras and the polished photos was a boy battling a silent storm. The bullying started early. "What's it like being a Trump?" they'd taunt, their voices sharp with mockery. At school, Barron was ridiculed for his last name, called a spoiled prince by those who didn't even know him. Even as a child, Barron didn't complain. He would sit alone in his room, staring out the window, wondering why people couldn't see him for who he truly was. Not the son of a powerful man, but just Barron. One evening, his father, Donald Trump, noticed his son's unusually quiet demeanor. "Barron, you okay?" he asked, his voice softer than anyone would expect. Barron hesitated, then shook his head. "I'm fine," he whispered. But deep down, he wasn't. And as he watched his father walk away, Barron made a decision. It was time to confront the pain he had been hiding. Barron knew he needed to share his story, but fear held him back. The Trump name carried weight, and he worried about how the world would react. One night, he finally gathered the courage to tell his parents. At the dinner table, Barron cleared his throat. "Dad, Mom, I need to talk to you." Melania Trump looked up, her face filled with concern. Donald Trump set his fork down, giving his son his full attention. "What is it, son?" "I've been struggling," Barron said, his voice trembling. "People think my life is perfect, but it's not. I get bullied every day, online, at school, and it's eating me up inside." The room fell silent. Melania reached for his hand, her eyes glistening. "Barron, why didn't you tell us sooner?" "I didn't want to burden anyone," he admitted. "But I can't stay silent anymore. I want to do something to help other kids who feel the same way." Donald Trump nodded slowly, his usually commanding presence softened by his son's vulnerability. "We'll support you," he said firmly. "Whatever you need, we'll make it happen." For the first time in years, Barron felt a glimmer of hope. Barron's first public speech was at a small charity event in New York. Despite his nerves, he stood tall, clutching the microphone. "Hi, I'm Barron Trump," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You might think I've had an easy life because of my last name, but the truth is, I've faced a lot of pain. I've been bullied by strangers, by classmates, even online. And it hurts." The audience was silent, captivated by his honesty. "For years, I kept it all inside, thinking I had to be strong. But I've learned that real strength comes from speaking out and helping others. That's why I'm here. To say that it's okay to feel hurt and it's okay to ask for help." As he finished, the room erupted in applause. Tears streamed down the faces of many in the audience, some remembering their own struggles, others moved by the courage of a boy so young. Backstage, Donald Trump pulled his son into a hug. "You've made me proud today, Barron," he said. But Barron knew this was just the beginning of a much bigger journey. Barron had always known that being a Trump came with a price. His father, Donald Trump, had been one of the most polarizing figures in modern history. Whether people loved or hated him, they often forgot that behind the headlines, there was a family, and at the heart of that family was a boy who just wanted to be normal. The bullying wasn't just from classmates. Anonymous messages flooded his social media. "Your father ruined this country," one read. "I bet you're just as bad." One day, while scrolling through the cruel comments, Barron's chest tightened. He didn't understand how strangers could hate someone they'd never met. He shut his laptop, his hands shaking. His mother, Melania, found him sitting alone in the garden later that evening. "You can't let them steal your peace, Barron," she said gently, her Slovenian accent wrapping her words with warmth. "You are more than their words." But Barron couldn't help wondering, was he? That night, as he stared at the ceiling, Barron realized something. He couldn't change what people said about him, but maybe, just maybe, he could use their words to create something meaningful. A few weeks later, Barron received a handwritten letter in the mail. It was from a girl named Emily who had seen his speech online. "Dear Barron," it began, "I watched your talk about bullying and it made me cry. I'm 13 and I've been bullied for being different. Hearing your story gave me hope. Thank you for being brave." Barron read the letter twice, his throat tightening. Emily's words felt like a lifeline, not just for her, but for him too. He showed the letter to his father later that evening. "Dad, people need someone to stand up for them. I think I can do that." Donald Trump looked at his son, his expression uncharacteristically tender. "Barron, this world can be harsh, but if you feel called to help, then you have my full support." For the first time, Barron felt a sense of purpose. He wasn't just the quiet boy in the background anymore. He was ready to make a difference. Barron's campaign started small, with a video posted on social media. Sitting in his room, he spoke directly to the camera. "Hi, I'm Barron Trump," he began, his voice steady. "I know what it's like to feel alone, to feel like no one understands. But I want you to know you're not alone. And together, we can make things better." The video quickly went viral. Messages poured in, some supportive, others cruel. But Barron didn't back down. He partnered with mental health organizations and started visiting schools, sharing his story. During one visit, he met a boy named Jacob who had been bullied for his stutter. "You helped me speak up," Jacob said, tears streaming down his face. Barron hugged him, feeling the weight of Jacob's gratitude. He realized that every story he heard, every tear he wiped away, was a reminder of why he had started this journey. But the road ahead wouldn't be easy. And as the campaign grew, so did the challenges that threatened to break him. As Barron's campaign gained momentum, so did the pressure. Interviews, school visits, and meetings filled his days. Every story he heard left an impression on his heart. Children who had been pushed to the brink, parents who had lost their kids to bullying. One night after a long day, Barron sat in his room, staring at the letters spread across his desk. Each one was a plea for help. He felt their pain deeply, as if it were his own. His father, Donald Trump, knocked on the door and walked in. "You're doing a great thing, son," he said, sitting beside him. "But you can't carry the world on your shoulders." Barron looked up, tears in his eyes. "What if I'm not strong enough, Dad? What if I fail them?" Donald Trump placed a firm hand on his son's shoulder. "Strength isn't about never feeling weak. It's about standing back up every time you fall. You've already shown strength by speaking out." Barron nodded, but the weight of the campaign felt heavier than ever. And deep down, he wondered if he was truly ready to face what lay ahead. One evening, while scrolling through social media, Barron came across a video. It was a compilation of his speeches, edited to mock him. The cruel captions stung. The rich kid's sob story and Trump's crybaby son. His heart sank. Despite all the good he was trying to do, there were still people who found joy in tearing him down. He showed the video to his mother, Melania. Her face hardened as she watched it. "This is not who you are," she said firmly. "You cannot let their hate stop your mission." "But what if they're right?" Barron asked, his voice breaking. "What if I'm just a privileged kid trying to act like a hero?" Melania knelt in front of him, her hands holding his. "You are doing this because you care. Not for fame, not for attention. You are giving a voice to those who have none. Never forget that." Her words stayed with Barron as he lay awake that night. The video hurt, but it also reminded him why he started. The bullies wouldn't win. Not this time. At one of his school visits, Barron spotted a boy sitting alone at the back of the auditorium. His head was down and his shoulders slumped, as if he were carrying an invisible weight. After his speech, Barron made his way to the boy, ignoring the crowd of students vying for his attention. "Hi," he said softly. "What's your name?" "Ethan," the boy mumbled, barely looking up. "Ethan, I noticed you sitting back here. Are you okay?" Ethan shrugged. "I guess. People don't really talk to me." Barron sat down beside him. "I know what that feels like," he said. "But you're not invisible, Ethan. I see you, and you matter." For the first time, Ethan looked up, his eyes filled with tears. "Do you really mean that?" Barron nodded. "Absolutely." As they talked, Barron realized that his campaign wasn't just about speeches or events. It was about moments like this, showing someone they weren't alone. When Barron left that day, Ethan smiled for the first time in months, and Barron knew he was on the right path, no matter how hard it got. The weight of the campaign began to take its toll on Barron. The letters, the stories, the faces of kids who looked to him for hope. It all felt overwhelming. One night, after a long day of interviews and meetings, he locked himself in his room and broke down in tears. The sound of his sobs was muffled by his pillow, but it wasn't long before his father knocked on the door. "Barron, can I come in?" Donald Trump's voice was uncharacteristically gentle. Barron didn't answer, but his father came in anyway. He sat beside him, quiet for a moment, then said, "I've been criticized my whole life, Barron. They've called me every name in the book. It's not easy, but I never let it stop me." Barron looked up, his eyes red. "But I'm not you, Dad. I'm not strong like you." Donald Trump shook his head. "You're stronger than you think. It takes courage to do what you're doing. I know it's hard, but you're changing lives, Barron. Don't let the pain make you forget that." Barron nodded, though his heart still felt heavy. Somehow, his father's words gave him a glimmer of strength to keep going. While sorting through old family photos one afternoon, Barron found a letter tucked inside a book. It was from his late grandfather, Fred Trump, written to Donald during a difficult time in his life. The words jumped off the page. "Strength isn't about avoiding pain. It's about using it to build something greater. Remember, the hardest times make the strongest people." Barron brought the letter to his father, who smiled wistfully as he read it. "He wrote this when I was younger than you," Donald said, his voice tinged with emotion. "I'd almost forgotten about it." Barron stared at the letter, feeling as though it had been left there for him to find. It was as if his grandfather's words had crossed time to reach him exactly when he needed them most. That night, Barron posted the quote on his social media, paired with a heartfelt message. "To everyone who feels broken, you are stronger than you know. Pain doesn't define you. How you rise from it does." The post went viral, touching millions of people. Barron felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he was making a difference. Barron's campaign caught the attention of a surprising figure, Oprah Winfrey. She reached out, inviting him to appear on her show to discuss his journey. When Barron arrived at the studio, he was nervous, but Oprah greeted him with warmth and kindness, instantly putting him at ease. As they sat across from each other, Oprah asked, "Barron, you've faced so much criticism, yet you continue to fight for others. What keeps you going?" Barron took a deep breath. "The stories I hear keep me going. Every kid who tells me they feel seen because of what I'm doing, that's what gives me strength." The audience erupted in applause, many wiping away tears. Oprah leaned forward, her eyes filled with admiration. "You're wise beyond your years, Barron. The world needs more young men like you." After the show, Barron received countless messages of support, but one stood out. A note from a mother who said Barron's words had stopped her son from ending his life. Barron read the message, his heart breaking and healing all at once. He realized that even in his darkest moments, he had to keep pushing forward. Lives depended on it. Barron woke up in the middle of the night, his heart pounding. He had dreamed he was back in school, standing in front of a classroom. The laughter of his classmates echoed loudly, drowning out his voice as he tried to speak. He sat up, clutching his blanket. The bullying he endured years ago still haunted him, sneaking into his dreams when he least expected it. The next morning, over breakfast, Donald Trump noticed Barron's pale face. "Another rough night?" he asked. Barron nodded. "I thought I was past it, but the memories still hurt." His father leaned back, his expression serious. "Barron, the scars of the past don't just vanish, but they're also proof that you've survived. You're using your pain to help others, and that's more powerful than anything those bullies could ever do to you." Those words lingered in Barron's mind all day. He realized he wasn't just fighting for others. He was fighting for himself, for the boy he used to be. That evening, Barron wrote in his journal, pouring out his emotions. It was his way of confronting the shadows of his past, determined not to let them take over his future. One quiet afternoon, Barron received a call that changed everything. The voice on the other end was soft but familiar. "Barron, this is Lady Gaga. I heard about your campaign, and I'd love to help." Barron was stunned. He had always admired her for her work with mental health and bullying awareness. Now, she wanted to collaborate with him. They arranged to meet, and when they did, Lady Gaga shared her own struggles with bullying and mental health. "I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "But I also know how healing it is to find your purpose." Together, they planned a massive event to raise awareness for bullying and mental health, bringing together young people, parents, and mental health professionals. The event would feature stories of resilience, live performances, and resources for those in need. As they worked on the project, Barron felt a renewed sense of hope. He wasn't alone in this fight, and he knew their combined efforts could make a real difference. The event, called Voices United, was held in a packed auditorium in New York City. Barron stood backstage, nervous but ready. He peeked out at the crowd, which included his family, Lady Gaga, and thousands of supporters. When it was his turn to speak, Barron took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The room fell silent as he began. "Thank you all for being here," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "I've been bullied. I've felt small, invisible, and broken. But I'm here today to tell you that you are not alone. Your pain does not define you, it strengthens you." Tears streamed down the faces of many in the audience. Donald Trump, sitting in the front row, wiped his eyes, his pride for his son evident. As Barron finished his speech, the crowd erupted in applause. People of all ages stood, united by the shared hope that change was possible. Barron smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. He had turned his pain into purpose, and in doing so, he had helped countless others find their voice. As Voices United gained worldwide attention, Barron found himself facing the harshest test yet. A video surfaced online, mocking his efforts and accusing him of using his platform for attention. The cruel comments flooded in, reigniting the old wounds he thought had healed. That evening, Barron sat in his room staring at the hateful messages. For the first time in months, he felt the familiar sting of self-doubt. His father walked in, sensing his distress. Donald Trump sat beside Barron, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "Barron, let me tell you something. When you're doing something good, something meaningful, there will always be people who try to tear you down. They're loud, but they don't matter. The lives you're changing, the people you're inspiring, they're the ones who matter." Barron nodded, though his heart still felt heavy. "It's just hard to ignore." Donald smiled gently. "Then don't ignore it. Use it. Prove them wrong, Barron, not by fighting back, but by continuing to stand for what's right." Barron stayed up late that night, writing a response to the video. He posted it with courage, his words honest and raw. Hate doesn't silence truth. Kindness will always speak louder. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Barron's words resonated deeply, sparking a global conversation about the power of kindness and resilience. One message stood out to him, a letter from an elderly woman named Eleanor. She had lost her grandson to bullying years ago, and Barron's campaign had given her comfort in her grief. "You're giving young people the hope my grandson never had," Eleanor wrote. "Thank you for being brave when so many stay silent." Barron read the letter aloud to his family, his voice trembling with emotion. Even Donald Trump, known for his tough exterior, wiped away a tear. "Barron," his mother Melania said, "what you're doing is beyond words. You're giving people something priceless: hope." Buoyed by the support, Barron announced the creation of a foundation dedicated to mental health awareness and anti-bullying initiatives. The announcement was met with applause from leaders, celebrities, and families around the world. As the foundation's launch day approached, Barron felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. The journey hadn't been easy, but it was worth every tear and struggle. The day of the foundation's launch was a moment Barron would never forget. Standing before a crowd of thousands, he looked out and saw faces filled with hope and gratitude. His parents stood in the front row, their pride unmistakable. Barron began to speak, his voice strong but full of emotion. "This isn't about me. It's about all of us, kids, parents, grandparents, coming together to make the world kinder and safer. No one should feel alone. No one should feel like they don't matter. Together, we can change that." The crowd erupted in applause, tears streaming down many faces. People of all ages, from all walks of life, came forward to share their stories, united by the belief that love and understanding could conquer hate. As the event concluded, Barron's eyes glistened with tears. He hugged his father, who whispered, "You've made us all proud, Barron. But more importantly, you've made the world a better place." Dear viewers, if this story moved you as much as it moved me to write it, please show your support by subscribing to my channel. Like this video, share it with others, and most importantly, leave a comment below about how this story touched your heart. Let's spread this message of hope together.